The first thing Emily noticed was the absurdly high ceiling. The second thing was the chandelier, 3 stories tall, dripping with crystals like frozen waterfalls. And the third? She was lying on silk sheets so smooth she could have sworn they were liquid. "Wait, what?" she muttered, sitting up. Her fingers brushed over manicured nails she didn't remember having. Her reflection in the gilded mirror was not her own. Long honey blonde hair, sharp cheekbones, and a nose that could cut glass. Her wide brown eyes were still hers, though suddenly aware, sharp and very alarmed. I'm rich," Emily whispered, staring at the lavish suite that looked more like a hotel presidential suite than a bedroom. A knock sounded at the door. "Miss Avery, breakfast is served," a perfectly polite but clearly overworked maid announced. "Breakfast? What year is this? Who's Avery?" Emily blurted, clutching the duvet to her chest. She dressed quickly, her thoughts racing. Somehow she had been reborn, or thrust, into the life of Amelia Avery, the sole heiress of one of the wealthiest families in the country. One day, Emily was a broke, overlooked, heartbroken woman barely scraping by. The next, she had her own wing in a mansion and a bank account that could buy a small country. Well, isn't that convenient, she thought, smirking despite the panic. The dining hall was a scene from a movie. High ceilings, polished marble, and a long table filled with silverware so shiny it practically glared. Her relatives, dressed in tailored suits and elegant gowns, were murmuring among themselves. Emily took a careful step forward. "Ah, the heiress awakens," a smooth male voice drawled from the other side of the table. Emily froze. He was impossibly handsome, tall, with dark hair that fell perfectly over one eyebrow and ice-blue eyes that seemed to see straight through her. He looked like he had walked out of a boardroom ad or a fashion magazine, and probably ran both. "And who might you be?" she asked cautiously. "I'm Adrian Blackwell," he said, voice calm, cold, almost lethal. "CEO of the family's primary corporation. And apparently your new guardian?" Emily blinked. "Guardian? I don't need a guardian. I need coffee, maybe a moment to figure out why I'm in a mansion I didn't own yesterday." Adrian raised a perfectly sculpted brow. "Coffee won't help you survive this family." Emily narrowed her eyes. "Excuse me?" "Relax," said her aunt, stepping forward with a polite smile that didn't reach her eyes. "You'll learn quickly, dear. In this family, wealth is a weapon, and everyone is armed." Emily's stomach sank. Figures. Nothing's ever simple. Breakfast was a mixture of tension, etiquette, and Emily accidentally spilling orange juice on a priceless lace runner. "Miss Avery, please," her aunt said, voice trembling between horror and fury. "You cannot." Emily froze. Then without thinking she said, "Oh, I'm sorry." "Really? Happens to the best of us, right?" Adrian's lips twitched. Not quite a smile, but maybe amusement? Emily gave him a small, awkward grin. "You seem calm. Are you always this terrifying?" "I only terrorize people who need it," he said flatly. "Noted," Emily muttered. "Great, the mysterious hot CEO thinks I need terrorizing. Perfect start." Later, she was given a quick tour of the mansion. Portraits of ancestors glared down at her from every wall, each looking like it was silently judging her for her previous life's poverty and heartbreak. Finally, she was shown her office, a space bigger than her old apartment. On the desk lay a leather folder with her name in gold lettering. Inside were contracts, trust funds, and instructions for managing her new fortune. Emily sat down, overwhelmed but secretly thrilled. "This is insane. But I can work with insane." As she flipped through the documents, Adrian's voice came from behind her, calm, measured, and just close enough to make her pulse skip. "Tomorrow, we start lessons in how to survive your relatives," he said. "They're charming but lethal." Emily looked up, smirking despite herself. "Lessons, huh? I've always wanted a mentor. Even if they're cold, mysterious, and terrifying." Adrian didn't smile, but his eyes lingered a moment longer than necessary. The first day of her new life had only just begun, and Emily already knew one thing for certain. Being rich was nothing compared to surviving the Avery family. Emily woke to the soft chime of a golden alarm clock and the smell of fresh pastries drifting from the dining hall. For a moment, she had to remind herself where she was. Not in her cramped apartment with peeling paint and stale coffee, but in the mansion of the Avery fortune. Stretching luxuriously across the silk sheets she still didn't feel entitled to, she muttered. Okay, world. Let's see if I can survive this without embarrassing myself. Too much. Breakfast was a tense, almost comical affair. Her uncle, a tall man with a permanent scowl, inspected her with a gaze that could curdle milk. Her cousins whispered and giggled behind their napkins, throwing side glances at the new heiress. And you are to learn proper etiquette immediately, her aunt said sharply, waving a hand at her. Do not disgrace this family with your crudeness. Emily raised an eyebrow. Crudeness? You mean spilling juice on your table yesterday? Her aunt's lips twitched, betraying a barely concealed scowl. It was antique lace, young lady. Emily grinned. Noted. Lace is sacred. Got it. She glanced toward Adrian, who stood silently by the side, arms crossed. His icy gaze made it clear he found her antics amusing, or scandalously reckless. You'll want to watch her, her aunt muttered under her breath. Adrian's lips curved faintly. I already am. After breakfast, Emily was led to the library for her lessons. A small army of etiquette guides, financial advisors, and image consultants had been summoned to mold her into the perfect heiress. The first lesson. Posture. Emily's tutor, a prim woman with a permanent frown, demonstrated how to walk, sit, and even sip tea like royalty. Emily attempted the pose, teetering slightly. I feel like a flamingo in heels. Control yourself, the tutor hissed. You are not a circus performer. Adrian appeared suddenly in the doorway, leaning casually against the frame. You do know flamingos are considered elegant, right? Emily blinked. Are you mocking me, Mr. Blackwell? Observation, not mockery. His voice was calm, but his eyes held amusement. I'll take that as a compliment, Emily said, smirking. Lessons continued, alternating between ridiculous drills in etiquette and a crash course in the Avery family business empire. Emily learned to sign checks, review contracts, and understand investment terms she had barely glanced at in her old life. Every so often, Adrian would lean over her shoulder, pointing out errors or explaining financial nuances in a way that was part teaching, part teasing. You know, he said one afternoon, you have potential. If you stop laughing at every serious topic like it's a joke. I find life hilarious, Emily replied lightly. Especially when everyone around me takes themselves too seriously. He didn't reply, just studied her with those cold blue eyes that somehow felt warmer every time they met hers. By evening, Emily had survived 3 etiquette drills, 2 business simulations, and 1 near disaster where she accidentally insulted a visiting business partner by mispronouncing his name. Impressive recovery, Adrian said, handing her a glass of water. Not everyone could spin humiliation into charm. Emily smirked. Thanks, I call it survival instinct with style. He raised a brow. You're dangerous. Only to people who underestimate me, she said smoothly. He said nothing, but the faintest curve of a smile ghosted across his face. That night, Emily sat in her suite, sipping tea and reviewing the family documents again. She had survived her first full day in the Avery mansion. Barely, but she was learning. Slowly. And somewhere in the background, she could feel Adrian's presence. Not looming exactly, but a constant, quiet reminder that in a world of scheming relatives and corporate warfare, she had a reluctant ally. And maybe something more. She smiled faintly to herself. If surviving one day in this mansion is any indication, tomorrow's going to be even more entertaining. One thing was certain. Emily Avery was here to stay, and she intended to do more than survive. The Avery Gala was in full swing, glittering like a scene straight out of a movie. Crystal chandeliers sparkled overhead, the music swirled, and guests in designer gowns and tailored suits mingled with polite laughter and clinking champagne glasses. Emily adjusted the hem of her emerald green gown, glancing at her reflection in a gilded mirror. Okay, Emily, she whispered to herself. Don't trip, don't spill anything, and whatever you do, don't make a fool of yourself. Famous last words. Her first target, or rather, challenge, appeared almost immediately. A sharply dressed executive with a smile that was more predatory than polite. Ah, Miss Avery, he said, bowing slightly. I hear you're now in charge of the Avery fortune. How fascinating. Emily extended a hand, giving her best polite smile. Pleasure to meet you. I've heard only good things about your portfolio. Portfolio? He raised an eyebrow, smiling thinly. You mean the one you're about to ruin? Emily's smile faltered. Ruin? Already? Before she could recover, Adrian appeared at her side, tall and calm as always. Perhaps you should introduce yourself properly, mister? The man hesitated, clearly surprised by Adrian's presence. Leonard. Leonard Harper. Mr. Harper, Adrian said smoothly. This is the heiress herself, Amelia Avery. I suggest you treat her with the respect due to someone who controls more of your company's fate than you realize. Emily suppressed a smirk. Smooth. Protective. A little arrogant. Hut. Got it. Emily tried to recover her composure and make polite conversation. But as she sipped champagne, disaster struck. Avery's. Leonard's voice carried across the ballroom. You're handling investments now? How adorable. Emily blinked. Adorable. Adorable, he repeated louder this time. It's cute that someone from, a modest background thinks she can handle the family fortune. Emily froze. Around them, the room went quiet, half in amusement, half in polite horror. Adrian's jaw tightened. Really, Harper? His voice was quiet. Dangerous. You want to try that tone again? Emily, feeling a sudden surge of courage, and perhaps adrenaline, decided to speak her truth, with a touch of comedic flair. Mr. Harper, I'm delighted you're so concerned about my background. You see, I've spent years living underestimating people like me. But now, she gestured at the room with a flourish, I get to do the underestimating. And you? You're already on the list. Gasps, murmurs, and awkward shuffling followed her words. Leonard's smile faltered. Adrian's blue eyes locked onto hers, and for a heartbeat, Emily thought he might scold her. Instead, he leaned closer, voice a low whisper only she could hear. Dangerous and hilarious. Perfect combination. Emily's cheeks warmed, but she didn't look away. Glad you approve. The rest of the night was a whirlwind of near disasters. She spilled a canopy on a senator's gown, accidentally insulted a business partner's accent, and somehow tripped over a velvet rope meant to mark the VIP section. Adrian was always there, sometimes silently saving her from a fall, sometimes teasingly pointing out her mistakes. Each interaction added a spark of electricity Emily couldn't ignore. At one point, as she caught her balance after narrowly avoiding a crash into the dessert table, Adrian caught her arm. Do you plan on surviving the entire gala like this, or are we going to have to intervene constantly? Emily smirked, gripping his arm lightly. Depends. Are you offering lessons, or are you just going to watch me crash spectacularly? I do both, he said coolly, though the hint of a smile tugged at the corner of his lips. He does both. Emily thought, heart fluttering. Somehow, she knew he wasn't just talking about etiquette. By the end of the night, Emily had managed to survive the gala, charm most of the guests, and even subtly assert herself in small business discussions. Adrian stood beside her as they watched the last guests depart, the ballroom empty and echoing. Not bad for your first gala, he said. Emily grinned, brushing her fingers against his sleeve. I think I've earned a medal, or at least a drink. Perhaps both, Adrian replied, his voice low and slightly amused. She laughed softly. I have a feeling surviving this family is going to be a lot more fun than I imagined. Adrian didn't answer. He just studied her, and Emily felt, for the first time, the dangerous thrill of knowing someone else could be just as sharp, just as unpredictable, and just as magnetic as she was. The morning sunlight poured through the Avery estate's grand windows, but Emily hardly noticed. Her head was still spinning from last night's gala, her near disasters, her witty comebacks, and the way Adrian had leaned just close enough to make her pulse race. Then came the reminder that wealth wasn't just glamorous gowns and sparkling chandeliers. Aunt Veronica, her most scheming relative, appeared at her door like a storm in heels. Emily! A word if you please, she said, voice honeyed but sharp as a dagger. Yes, Aunt Veronica? Emily replied, bracing herself. Veronica smiled, eyes glittering with concealed malice. You made quite the impression last night, charming the guests. But have you considered the other impression you've left? Emily tilted her head. Other impression? You're new, you're inexperienced, and you're showing everyone that you can't be trusted with the family fortune. Some people might think that I can outwit them anyway? Emily finished with a grin. Veronica's smile faltered. Progress. You'll see, Veronica said, voice low. This family doesn't take kindly to outsiders claiming their throne. Emily nodded politely, but her mind was already racing. Throne, fortune, danger. Sounds like Tuesday. Later that day, Emily entered her private study, only to find Adrian already there, reviewing financial documents with the precision of a man born to power. You're early, she said, setting her bag down. I could say the same to you, he replied without looking up. Emily crossed her arms. So, what dangerous secrets are we uncovering today? Adrian finally looked at her, his icy blue eyes calm yet piercing. Your relatives aren't just charming socialites. They've been plotting against you since before you arrived. Emily raised an eyebrow. Oh, care to name names, or should I start guessing? Veronica has been feeding false information to our business partners, Adrian explained, pointing at spreadsheets. She wants you out, publicly humiliated and financially cornered. And that's only the beginning. Emily felt a thrill of both fear and excitement. Finally, the real game begins. Hours later, Emily and Adrian were in the library, combing through decades of family documents. She found records of shady deals, suspicious transfers, and, most importantly, a handwritten note tucked in one old ledger. Trust no one outside the family. And even within. Be careful. Emily's heart skipped a beat. It was like a message from someone who had lived in her shoes before. You see, Adrian said, leaning over her shoulder. The Avery fortune has always been a battlefield. You're stepping into a war. And I thought surviving a gala was tough, Emily muttered, smirking. Adrian's gaze lingered on her longer than necessary. You're sharper than you look. Dangerous, even. Emily met his stare. Careful, Mr. Blackwell. Dangerous people tend to attract trouble. And sometimes, each other. A faint flicker of amusement touched his expression, but his eyes stayed serious, calculating. That evening, Emily decided to test the waters. She confronted her cousins in the sitting room, using charm and subtle wit to probe their intentions. Each of them laughed, teased, and tried to dominate the conversation, but Emily managed to twist their words, catching hints of jealousy, greed, and secret alliances. By the time she left the room, she had more allies than she expected, and a growing list of enemies. Adrian found her on the balcony afterward, overlooking the city lights. Rain had started, soft and warm against the cold night. You did well, he said quietly. Flattery, Mr. Blackwell? Emily teased. You're not getting soft on me already, are you? He didn't answer immediately. Instead, he looked at her. Really looked, and for a moment, the cold CEO seemed human. You're not just surviving this family, he said, voice low. You're learning to play. That makes you dangerous. In a very interesting way. Emily felt her cheeks warm, the tension between them undeniable. Careful, she said softly. Dangerous things have a way of attracting worse things. He didn't respond, only watched her silhouette against the city lights, the quiet closeness between them electrifying. Emily smiled to herself. If surviving my family is this exciting, I can't wait to see what comes next. Emily had just finished reviewing the latest business reports when the first warning came. A subtle, almost imperceptible glitch in her office computer. At first, she thought it was technical. Until confidential files she had only glanced at minutes before appeared on screens across the mansion's security monitors. Someone was watching her. By the time she processed the danger, the door burst open. Adrian stood there, expression tense, his sharp suit slightly disheveled. You shouldn't be alone right now. Emily arched an eyebrow. I handle danger every day. I mean, surviving Aunt Veronica is practically a martial art. Adrian didn't smile. This is different. Before she could respond, a loud crash echoed from the hallway. Glass shattered, and a masked intruder slipped through the doorway, lunging for the leather folder containing sensitive Avery contracts. Emily froze. Panic surged. Move! Adrian shouted, grabbing her hand and pulling her behind his broad frame. The intruder swung again. Emily dodged instinctively, and the blade grazed her sleeve. Sparks of adrenaline shot through her body. You're insane, she gasped. You're alive, he replied shortly, focusing on the intruder. In a swift motion, he disarmed the assailant with precise martial arts moves she could barely follow. Within seconds, The intruder was restrained and quickly handed over to the mansion's security team. Emily's heart was racing. Her knees felt weak, and her hands shook. You saved me," she whispered, voice trembling. Adrian stepped closer, his usual calm aura replaced by intensity. "I told you. This family doesn't play fair. You weren't prepared. I can't let them hurt you." Emily looked up at him. "You're always going to be there, aren't you?" His icy blue eyes softened slightly. "A rarity. I'm not your bodyguard, Emily. But sometimes, I care more than I should." Her pulse quickened. She swallowed hard. "More than you should?" Adrian hesitated. "I'm supposed to be cold, distant, professional. Not this." The tension between them was palpable. Emily's fingers brushed his arm unintentionally. Electricity sparked through her, and for a heartbeat, the world shrank to just the two of them. "Why do you care?" she asked softly. He didn't answer immediately. Instead, he leaned closer, the faintest hint of a smile tugging at his lips. "Because you're the first person here who isn't afraid of me, or of the family. And I respect that. More than I should." Emily's cheeks flushed, her heart thundering in her chest. "And what about the rest of your feelings?" Adrian's gaze held hers, unwavering. "I'm trying to keep them in check, but sometimes it's impossible." Later that evening, Emily paced in her suite, mind spinning. Adrian's words, his presence, and the close call with the intruder left her shaken, but alive. More than that, something had shifted. Her thoughts kept returning to him, the way he protected her, teased her, and now revealed a crack in his ice-cold exterior. Her phone buzzed with a message from her cousin. "You're not safe. Neither is he. Trust no one." Emily swallowed. The warning wasn't new, but it felt sharper tonight. She looked out at the city lights from her balcony, Adrian's words echoing in her mind. "I care more than I should." She realized, with a thrill she couldn't ignore, that danger and desire were now intertwined. The same man who could have frozen her out of his world had saved her, and perhaps unknowingly, stolen a piece of her heart. Emily smiled faintly to herself. If surviving the Avery family is this intense, I might actually enjoy it. Especially with him around. The mansion was quiet, but she knew this was just the calm before the next storm. And as she turned to prepare for tomorrow's family meeting, she silently vowed, no matter what schemes or betrayals awaited, she would face them head-on. And she would not face them alone. The Avery estate felt smaller somehow, as if every hallway and corridor was watching Emily. She moved through the mansion with cautious steps, her mind racing with plans. Aunt Veronica's threat still echoed in her ears. This family doesn't take kindly to outsiders claiming their throne. And Emily intended to claim it anyway. Adrian met her in the library, leaning against the doorframe with his signature calm, yet that faint tension lingered in his posture. "You've got company," he said, voice low. Emily turned to see two of her cousins whispering and glaring at her across the room. "They've been plotting again," Adrian continued. "If you don't act, one of them will find a way to ruin your first major corporate decision." Emily smirked. "Good thing I've got a mentor. Or at least, someone terrifying enough to keep them in check." He raised an eyebrow. "I'm not your mentor." "Call it a partnership then," she said. "You help me survive, and I'll make sure you stay entertained." Adrian considered her words carefully, then nodded once. "Fine. But understand this, one wrong move and it's not just your reputation on the line." "I'm well aware," she replied, voice steady, though her heart thumped at the nearness of him. The two of them retreated to a smaller conference room, locked the doors, and spread out financial reports, contracts, and old family ledgers. "Here," Emily said, pointing to a series of transactions. "This proves someone's siphoning money from the company accounts. Look here. Dates, amounts, and patterns. It's subtle but deliberate." Adrian leaned over, tracing the numbers with a finger. "Impressive," he said, a rare note of admiration in his voice. "Most people would overlook these. But you think like a strategist." Emily felt a warmth rise to her cheeks. "I've had practice surviving people who underestimate me." He looked up at her then, eyes locking with hers. "And yet you're still alive. And somehow, dangerously charming." Emily smiled. Daringly. "Dangerous, huh? I like the sound of that." But careful. I might steal your thunder. Adrian's lips twitched. You'd better not. The words hung in the air between them, teasing and electric. Emily could feel the tension coil like a spring, ready to snap. As the evening deepened, Emily's plan took shape. She would confront Aunt Veronica subtly during the family meeting, using evidence Adrian and she had uncovered to corner her cousin and redirect the schemes back at her. What if she retaliates? Emily asked, half serious. Then we make sure she can't, Adrian said, voice firm. I'll be by your side. Just stay close to me. Emily felt her pulse quicken at the statement. The closeness wasn't just physical. It was a promise. Protection. Something more. And for the first time, Emily allowed herself to consider the possibility that in a family where betrayal was a daily sport, Adrian might be the one person she could trust, completely. The family meeting was tense. Veronica attempted her usual subtle intimidation, leaning on her chair, smiling in a way that made Emily want to roll her eyes and throw her coffee at her. But Emily was ready. Confident, poised, armed with strategy and the rare certainty that Adrian had her back. Before we start, Emily began, voice clear and confident, I'd like to address an issue that affects the company and the family's trust. Veronica's smile faltered slightly. Emily laid out the evidence. Siphoned accounts, suspicious transactions, and discrepancies in the records. She spoke deliberately, each word slicing through the room like a blade. Adrian stood beside her, silent but undeniably present, a living shield. Every glance he gave her reinforced her courage. By the time she finished, the room was silent. Veronica's face was a mask, carefully composed but trembling slightly at the revelation. Emily's cousins looked shocked, some impressed, some furious. Emily exhaled softly. One battle won. The war's still ahead. Adrian leaned close, voice low so only she could hear. You're ruthless when you want to be. Emily's lips curved in a small, confident smile. I learned from the best. And I have a really good partner. He didn't respond immediately, only let his eyes linger on hers. For a heartbeat, it wasn't business. It wasn't family intrigue. It was just them. The kind of silence that speaks volumes. That night, Emily lay in her suite, reviewing the day's events. She had survived another trial, outwitted her relatives, and strengthened an unspoken bond with Adrian. Her heart was full of adrenaline and a strange, thrilling anticipation. The danger wasn't over, but somehow with him by her side, it felt manageable. Even exciting. And as she drifted to sleep, she allowed herself a secret thought. Maybe surviving the Avery family isn't just about strategy. Maybe it's about learning who's worth trusting. And who's worth something more. The Avery estate was tense that morning, the air thick with whispered rumors and suspicious glances. Emily walked through the hallways with measured confidence, her gown flowing elegantly behind her. Today wasn't about charm. It was about power. Every step she took was a reminder. She was no longer the overlooked heartbroken woman from her past life. She was the heiress, and everyone here would soon realize it. The family gathered in the grand boardroom. Aunt Veronica, fuming behind her polished smile, tried to assert dominance. Her cousins whispered, sharing sly glances, and the rest of the family watched, curious and wary. Emily took a deep breath, letting Adrian's quiet presence behind her bolster her courage. The cold CEO had been by her side throughout every near disaster, every plot, every betrayal. And somehow, she realized she trusted him completely. Before we begin today, Emily started, voice calm but commanding, I'd like to address the ongoing issues affecting our family and company. Gasps echoed softly around the room. Emily continued, presenting evidence she and Adrian had meticulously compiled. Forged documents, siphoned accounts, and subtle manipulations designed to discredit her. Aunt Veronica's face tightened. She tried to interject, but Emily raised a hand. Silence, please, Emily said firmly. We all see the truth now. With one final flourish, she revealed the piece de resistance. A recording of Veronica's secret meetings with rivals, planning to strip Emily of her inheritance. The room went silent. Even the stoic cousins looked stunned. Veronica's composure cracked. This is impossible. You have no right. Emily's gaze was sharp, unwavering. I have every right. I am the Avery heir, and I will not allow deception to take what is mine. And from now on, Anyone who tries will answer directly to me. Adrian stepped forward, placing a protective hand subtly near her back. His presence was both a shield and a reminder that she was not alone. Veronica's fury flared, but the board's decision was unanimous. The manipulative aunt was stripped of influence, and the cousins, some allies, some enemies, were forced to acknowledge Emily's authority. The boardroom erupted into whispers and murmurs, but Emily's calm smile never faltered. Later, on the balcony overlooking the city lights, Emily exhaled, the tension finally easing from her shoulders. Adrian stood beside her, silent as ever, but the warmth in his gaze was unmistakable. "You did it," he said softly, voice low. "You faced them all, and won." Emily chuckled lightly, leaning against the railing. "I couldn't have done it alone." He finally met her eyes, and in that moment, the professional distance between them vanished. "No, but I'm glad you didn't try to do it without me." Her heart raced. "And I'm glad you stayed by my side, even when things got dangerous." Adrian took a slow step closer. "I've never done this before, but you've changed that. You're not just smart, witty, or beautiful. You're everything." Emily felt the tension coiling inside her unravel into something exhilarating. Everything, huh? Dangerous, entertaining, infuriating, and now flattering. He smiled faintly, his usual icy demeanor softening. "All of the above." The city lights reflected in Emily's eyes as she leaned slightly closer. "Adrian," she whispered. He closed the distance. Their foreheads touched first, a tentative, gentle connection. Then slowly, they leaned into each other, lips meeting in a kiss that was neither rushed nor hesitant. It was a promise, a bond forged through danger, trust, and shared victories. When they finally parted, Adrian rested his forehead against hers. "Whatever comes next," he murmured, "we face it together." Emily smiled, feeling more alive than she ever had. "Together," she echoed. Back inside the mansion, the rest of the family began to adjust. Allies approached Emily with cautious respect, and enemies retreated, realizing she had cemented her authority. She wasn't just surviving anymore. She was thriving. Adrian watched her from across the room, a quiet satisfaction in his gaze. Emily noticed him watching, and she smirked. "Enjoying the show?" "Always," he replied. "But this time, the star isn't just surviving, she's ruling." Emily laughed softly. For the first time in her life, she felt fully in control of her life, her fortune, and her heart. And as the moonlight bathed the Avery estate, Emily Avery, the once overlooked, once heartbroken woman, stood triumphant, reborn, and ready to embrace every thrilling, dangerous, and romantic moment of her new life. Thank you so much for listening. If you enjoyed this story, don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe for more original novel stories. And stay tuned, our next story is coming soon.